Fellas, I got a question for you. Do you hate fun? Do you want your friends to dislike you? Do you hate when your opponent actually plays the game against you? Then boy do I have the deck for you. What is going on, guys? Drew YGO here, back with another deck profile. Today we are doing Gravekeepers. Gravekeepers are an archetype of monsters based around shutting down the graveyard with their field spell Necro Valley, which a long time ago had some really confusing card text. I think it said something along the lines of any effect that involves the graveyard is negated, but thankfully they cleared it up a little bit. This card pretty much just shuts down anything from the graveyard. If your opponent needs to banish something from the graveyard, if they're trying to special summon from the graveyard, so this whole deck revolves around just shutting down anything your opponent does. And also, we have a spell card which just rips monsters out of their hands. So, we'll go ahead and get into the deck list, and I'm going to be explaining what a few of the cards do. So first off, we got the Gravekeeper's Heretic. So this card is on the field, is unaffected by card effects as long as Necro Valley is on the field. Pretty simple. It's an 1800 attack, level 4 beat stick. But with Necro Valley, normally it would raise up to, I think, what is it, 2300? Yeah, 2300. But because it's unaffected by card effects, it doesn't get the attack boost from Necro Valley. It's confusing. But this is just the guy that you have just sitting there on the field. Because it's not affected by things like Raigeki, Lightning Storm, or anything your opponent tries to do, it can only really be destroyed by battle. Next up, we got the 3 Gravekeeper's Commandant. You can discard this card at a Necro Valley, right? It's simple. We got 1 Gravekeeper's Spiritualist. During your main phase of Necro Valleys on the field, you can fusion summon a spellcaster fusion monster from your extra deck using this card you control and other monsters from your hand or field as material. This is just polymerization on legs, so hey, why not? Next, we got the Dogmatica Ecclesia the Virtuous. I'm not really gonna explain what this card does. If you want to read it, go ahead, you can pause it, but there's just way too much text and I don't want this video to be too long. And that's it for the monsters. So we got 1 Harpy's Feather Duster, and then 3 Necro Valley Throne. This card, when it's activated, you can activate one of these effects. You can add a Gravekeeper monster from deck to hand, and immediately after this effect resolves, you can normal summon a Gravekeeper's monster. You're mainly going to be using it for the first effect, just adding a Gravekeeper. Let's say that you don't have a Necro Valley in the hand. This can turn into a Terraforming, right? You can add the Commandant, discard the Commandant, get the Necro Valley, right? So, a lot of versatility with this card. Next, we have 1 card of Demise. In Master Duel, I believe you can have 3 cards of Demise. But we're in the TCG, we've only got 1, so we're working with what we got. Next is 3 Royal Tribute. Like I said earlier, if you control Necro Valley, both players discard any monsters in their hands. Look guys, we're only running 8 monsters, so this isn't much of a detriment to you as much as it is to your opponent, and this is especially worse. You have to control Necro Valley anyway, but if your opponent discards a bunch of monsters that have maybe like a floating effect or some kind of other effect in the graveyard, Necro Valley shuts it down. So, incredibly oppressive. Next, we got the 1 copy of Terraforming because we need that Necro Valley. We've got 2 Pots of P, 3 Pots of Duality, 2 Cosmic Cyclone, 1 Hidden Temple of the Necro Valley. This card is if you can only activate it if you control a Gravekeeper monster and Necro Valley at the same time. Neither player can special summon monsters. So it's that 1 dinosaur monster, I forgot what it's called, Pachycephal, I don't remember, but yeah, it just prevents special summoning. So do with that what you will. Then we have the main man of the hour, or I guess the main canyon of the hour, Necro Valley. I'll go ahead and read it if you don't know what it does. All Gravekeeper's monsters gain 500 attack and defense. Cards in the graveyard cannot be banished. Negate any card effect that would move a card from the graveyard to a different place. Negate any card effect that changes types or attributes in the graveyard. So that third one, unless you're going up against Element Sabers, this won't really come up. But the first 2, Again, if your opponent has a card with a floating effect, it won't go off, because most of the time cards have to be banished in order to do some kind of thing from the graveyard, and they can't be banished, and they can't be special summoned from the graveyard, which is where about 90% of meta decks kind of special summon from. And even against Sword Soul, one of their boss monsters has to banish worm monsters from the graveyard in order to negate or pop cards, I believe. I forget exactly what it does, but I do know it involves banishing. They can't use it while Necro Valley's on the field. So this is just an incredible card. I really, really love when old cards are really good. Solemn Judgment. So let's move on to the traps. We got 3 Torrential Tribute. This isn't much of a detriment to this deck specifically, because, like I said, we're only running 8 monsters, so not having a monster on the field is not the worst thing in the world, mainly because winning by just attacking a bunch is not your main win condition, so that's why we got the Torrential Tribute. Next, we've got 3 Dogmatica Punishment. You can target a face-up monster your opponent controls, send 1 monster with an equal or higher attack from your extra deck to the graveyard, and if you do, destroy that monster. Until the end of your next turn after this card resolves, you cannot special summon monsters from the extra deck, and you can only activate 1 per turn. So, it's pretty obvious, it's plain to see that since we're running the pot of P anyway, we're not going to be special summoning from the extra deck almost never. It is certainly possible because we do have the Gravekeeper Spiritualist and the Gravekeeper's Supernaturalist in the extra deck, but you're not going to be going into it a lot because it's not really that important. Next, we got 3 of the most fun card in the game. Honestly, guys, I don't like this card. I hate this card. It makes the game unfun, but it does give a really powerful boost to decks like this that might not be as powerful as the tier 0 whatever Splight is doing now. But, you know, it's here. It's out. The skill has been drained. So we're running 3 of them. And then finally, we got the 3 Solemn Judgment. Alright, that is it for the main deck. We will now move on to the extra deck. We got 2 copies of Elder Entitas. You can send it with your Dogmatica Punishment to destroy a monster. And when it's sent to the graveyard, you can destroy another card. So, this is mainly what you're going to want to be sending, alongside your Fossil Warrior Skull Knight, which pretty much does the exact same thing. You can banish this card from your graveyard to just target a monster on the field and destroy it. So, really good to have in your graveyard. Then we've got the 1 Gravekeeper's Supernaturalist, which just requires 2 Gravekeeper's monsters. It gains attack and defense equal to the combined original levels of the materials used for its fusion summon, times 100. While Necro Valley is on the field, this card and any card in your field zone cannot be destroyed by card effects. During your main phase, you can activate this effect. During the end phase of this turn, add a Gravekeeper monster or 1 Necro Valley card from your deck to your hand. You can only use this effect once per turn. So, it is really, really good to have out on the field, especially if you go into it with Spiritualist and another level 4 monster, because it will gain 8 times 100. It will gain 800 attack, so it'll be a 2800. Necro Valley and this card cannot be destroyed by card effects, so it kind of protects your Necro Valley a lot, because Necro Valley doesn't have much inherent protection. So getting this out on the field is really, really nice. Next, we have 6 extra deck monsters of your choice. I just chose the funniest ones. We got 1 Tornado Dragon, 1 Zeus, 1 Nightmare Unicorn, 1 Nightmare Phoenix, and 1 Access Code Talker. And guys, that about does it for the deck list. Drop in the comments if you got any questions. Tell me what you liked about it, what you didn't like, what you'd leave out, what you'd put back in, and we'll get into some duel replays. This has been Drew YGO. Till next time. game.